Okay, so. Morgen.
Presentation instead or have a oral exam, but I didn't find if we had to submit the subject or it would just be questions asked by you to us. So you need to prepare a dissertation on something, it's just general questions on the Ja, das Schade ist immer ganz gut.
Ja. Also mir ist es sauer draußen, weil ich so schön.
Ja. Wenn man es gewohnt ist, einen Schal zu tragen, wenn man es gar nicht gewohnt ist, dann macht es nichts. Aber sonst
Ja, ich bin der Bank in der Kinder, aber jetzt ist ja ein paar Wochen gefragt, dann muss ich alles jetzt ausfüllen. Was machst du also für die Pause?
Ich glaube, der Familie, die Eltern ein bisschen noch versorgen und besuchen und Zeit für die Familie zu haben. Mein Sohn, der kommt aus Amerika wieder. Ich habe 2, ja. Die sind älter sogar als ihr. Wahrscheinlich. Nee, der war jetzt also der hat sein Jurastudium jetzt sein erstes Examen gemacht und war jetzt im halbes Jahr in Champaign, das ist bei Chicago an der Uni, und da kommt er am 23. jetzt wieder.
Auch große Weihnachten drauf.
Ich habe ihn vor 3 Wochen besucht, da war ich eine Woche bei ihm. Also da war Thanksgiving und da hat er nichts zu tun. Und ich sagte, so, ich komme jetzt schnell zu dir. Und dann habe ich ein Ticket gekauft und es war relativ billig, weil kein Mensch im November dahin fliegt.
Das geht vielleicht weg davon.
Und dann haben wir eine Woche uns ein Mietauto genommen und sind nach New Orleans, so den ganzen Mississippi runter und das hat wirklich Spaß gemacht. Und war ja auch schön, einfach mal eine Woche Vater und Sohn zusammen.
Und der andere Sohn ist auch der.
Der studiert Lehramt und macht seinen Master gerade in der Humboldt. Sport und Geografie.
Sport und Geografie.
Ja.
Meine Freundin studiert Englisch auf Lehramt an der Humboldt. Aber nur im Bachelor noch.
Ja,
Das ist ein interessanter Ort, die Humboldt hat schon gesagt.
ja.
Die FU ist viel besser, jeder weiß das.
Ach, ja, also mir gefällt es auch besser, weil die so ein bisschen mehr Campus.
Ja.
Da war so ein bisschen blöd, finde ich, dass
Ja,
das alles durcheinander ist. Und unheimlich Problem, was ich Seminare zu kriegen, das ist irgendwie.
Ja, auch Sport.
Ja.
Mein Bruder hat eine andere, die auch die macht Sport und sie meinte, es gibt Leute, die so bei dem 8. Semester noch nicht den ersten Seminar gemacht haben, weil die Schlangen alles
Das ist ganz, ganz blöd. Hat es dann irgendwie mal geschafft, aber das war sehr unangenehm. Ich weiß nicht, ob das viel besser ist an der FU, aber.
Ja, für Sport war es nur sehr begrenzt.
Ja, wahrscheinlich.
Guys, let's slowly start. So the first topic I want to cover is the third topic. So I want to use the habits as the topic that you chose.
Das ist ein Stück.
Okay, so I see a few of you have included them and you have until today to put it there. I think Gefei, you sent me through email, but you can put it here in the discussion forum. The topic.
Topic for the seminar.
The term paper, yeah.
But your PowerPoint was saying that you sent you to email.
Okay, maybe it was a mistake, but please put it here because then when you do the outline, you also have to put it here.
So I can put today or so
Yeah,
there is no
you
time.
can do today, yeah, no
There
worries.
is no DDL and etc.
Yeah, so let's see at the topic, so you have political economy of corruption in developing countries. Guys, please, I cannot talk too loud today, so please be quiet. Yes, so the political economy of corruption in developing countries. Okay, so as you can see, some of them are really long, some of them are short. So in this case, it's a general topic, no? And then The idea is that during the break you can think about a research question and make it more narrow. So already I see that some of you are a bit quite there already. So technical failure, structural bias, comparative evaluation of the stated goals and the true beneficiaries of the largest IMF loan in history. Okay. Also try to make titles that are not so, let's say, how do you say this, puzzling maybe? That are not so puzzling, that in the title already I can see more or less your research question. I mean, here it says Argentina, but yeah, I guess this is one of the ways that people name their papers today as well. The cause of closed borders, immigration restrictions, and development process in Latin America, with implications for European migration policy. Okay, so already on this topic I can more or less see what the research question is going to go to, no? So what is the impact of these immigration restrictions? Immigration restrictions and losses. Okay, maybe it's not so clear which way is the reasoning going, so this is something that we can work more later. How the systemic difference of industrial shape the divergent development outcomes from South Korea and Brazil. So yeah, already you can see this is like the research question as a title. This is also okay. And it's a clear causal chain, the systemic difference in industrial policy towards divergent, so comparing these two countries in terms of the development outcomes. Here then the work will be then to narrow it, which development outcomes, because as you have seen so far, there are many ways you can measure that. So of course you don't have that much space in the paper to do everything, so you have to really focus on something. Okay, see here how Chile managed to stay relatively stable and growth since the 80s, despite persistent dependence on comparative rich institutions and policies explained in the. So this is like the research question. No? Yeah. For the title, you can make like a shorter title at the end, but it's fine. It's already showing that you have thought. It's also showing a time frame. We will talk more about how to really put a narrow research question after we come from the break. Yes, knowledge spillovers in economic development, contrasting Latin America with East Asia tigers. Okay, so this is kind of a more or less a structured topic already, but knowledge spillovers of what, for example, this already I'm asking, what could be, what could that be? Okay, and then last.
I changed it a little bit because I couldn't find out how to delete my first post, so I
you put it inside.
posted something else on.
Okay, so this one.
Yes.
That's fine. Yeah, you can also, I mean, it's not set in stone, so whatever you have so far, you still have time to change it to this idea. You work on it until you find some things.
Yes.
That is good. So how have these economies affected economic and social development in Latin America countries, and through which mechanisms have shaped development trajectories in Colombia, Mexico, and others? Okay. So then here it's narrowing. Okay, what do you mean by illicit drug economies? Is it because like the 50% of the GDP is drugs? You know, so these are things that we have to.
But I want to focus more on the mechanisms that are affected by it, and not on the drug economy itself, because.
But this we will talk more about.
Okay.
So we will focus on each one.
It's a big topic.
Okay, so I can see already. Please upload all your topics so I can see that. Then what else do we have?
Excuse me. Is that the topic should be defined by our own, or is that somewhere defined?
No, it's by your own idea.
Is there a deadline?
Today, yeah. Today is the deadline for the topic.
Today is.
Yeah, you sent me the topic by email.
But I sent already like 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, you were early.
I
So
was,
the deadline
but
was
the PowerPoint is wrong, right?
the one before, yeah.
The
Sorry,
deadline
but
in the
I
PowerPoint
said
is
in
wrong.
class that I was wrong. So
So there is no deadline, so to say.
for you, no. You have already done it, so you're good. Okay, so let's check the syllabus
Okay,
again.
can you just check which kind of PowerPoint is that? Where you say that put in the discussion for room and what the date is that? Can you find the PowerPoint which
Yeah,
you
we can do that later
describe?
after class. Yeah,
After class, I don't have time and can do that now.
I can send it to you by email if you want.
Yeah,
You already sent me the title. It's okay, you're fine.
yeah, but why you ask me then before class? So that's really
No, what I ask you is to put it here because then we will have an outline.
because I don't. No one informed me. I don't know that I should put that in the discussion for room. Maybe I'm not the Latin American student, so.
Okay, if you don't want to put it in
So
the
I will
discussion
wait for
forum,
your
it's
email,
okay.
so to say, yeah.
Okay. Okay, so then let's look at the syllabus together. So that we know what is coming. Let's see. Where is it? Okay. So just that we are all clear on the deadlines. Where's the plus sign here? Okay. So here you have an overview, no? I just want you to remember that yeah, when you start on the next sessions, then there is a Wednesday, okay, for the gender inequality people. So we will go to the Wednesday room and also the 28th of January. And then what is coming next is there in the discussion forum, you will upload your paper outline just underneath the title that you create. Okay?
Would you like to have this? Is it a kind of bullet points or?
Yeah,
should
we
it
will
be-
talk about
Okay.
that. Yes, but this is on the 27th, so we will talk about it more on the 6th, I think. So you still have time. Today we will talk a bit more about the research question. And I mean, I will also put the overview here of the things that you have to take into account when you're writing this paper, just that you have maybe a more clear guidance. So yeah, the first thing when you're writing a paper is the research question. This is the first main thing that you have to work on. First you think about ideas, as you have done so far, you have a topic, but yeah, since we are in this class, we have kind of seen how maybe a policy is evaluated or how do you study a paradigm of development in Latin America. You more or less see the structure of the papers, how they are, and you see that in all of them, as we have also presented here, they have a clear research question. And why is it important? Because also it helps you to be narrow, so that you don't go in circles when you're doing your research paper, when you're writing. It serves like a guide for you to help you to find the conclusion that you want to reach. So I have a small exercise here. What is this? Narrow. Okay. So let's see. These are a few research questions. Can you see it? So which is the best for you without knowing any techniques? So first of all, there are three options. You have too easy, too late, and best choice. Okay, first let's read this part. So imagine that you have been asked to write an essay about earthquakes. The broad topic that you have chosen is the social impact of earthquakes. You have narrowed down your topic and decided to focus on the issue of homelessness caused by the Haitian earthquake of 2010. You are particularly interested in why there are high levels of homelessness several years after the earthquake. Which of these three options is the best? So the first one, discuss the connections between the Haitian earthquake and the issue of ongoing homelessness in Haiti. What do you think? You have a weird face,
Yeah,
yeah?
it's pretty broad. It doesn't really focus on a
It's my email.
specific time,
Mhm.
like after the earthquake. So it
Victor.
could maybe be.
Yeah. Yeah. Also over there was a comment? No. Don't be scared, you can talk. So also like the way the sentence is made, no? There's something weird about it.
No question.
Uh-huh. Yeah, it's not a question, it's more like a enunciation or like do something, yeah. So already it needs to work, no? So these I will say maybe. Which one do you say? Too big, too easy? I think it doesn't matter, it's just you can try too vague, yeah. So the wording of this question is too vague. It lacks a clear task. It implies that the assignment will look at homelessness over an unspecified time. So yeah, what do you mention? Okay, the second one and the third one. So, what impact did the Haitian earthquake have on the rate of homelessness? And the last one is the Haitian earthquake of 2010 caused widespread homelessness. Why, despite relief efforts, the levels of homelessness still high between 2014 and 2016? Which one do you think is the best choice?
The lower one. It's
This
more
lower one,
specific.
yeah. And already you can see some hints. I mean, this one is already longer, but it's already explaining a bit the problem in itself, and it's setting this timeline that you mentioned. No? So yeah, this is the best choice. Yeah, and also it kind of has an encouragement on this why question. Why is it that still, despite relief efforts, so you really put like an extra interest in it, so that people want to read your paper and find out what's the answer to this question. And this one is too easy because it's just like impact can be anything. No? Yeah. So of course, an earthquake is easy. Like an earthquake leaves people homeless because it destroys homes. And then it's more like descriptive. So this could be okay for like a descriptive report, but usually what happens is that these reports are super long. As you have seen, though, some other reports that are put in the syllabus are super long, but then we focus on like one chapter. If a problem has many different angles to it. So this is not what you do in the paper, you do something more specific. And let's see if I have them in the slides. Okay, this is for the outline, but let me show you maybe the other. So I had another slide with a bit more detail on how to narrow this research question so that you can already use that. Okay, have you ever heard of this SMART research question, or sometimes they call it SMART key performance indicators? Okay, so let's go through it really quickly. And I will put it then in the slides, so we will talk a bit about this again. And I have this slide. Just one second.
Das ist doof.
Give me a little second.
I have a lot of stuff. That's true.
das. Das stimmt. Ja, genau. Das ist relativ.
Okay, so this is just as simple as it looks. So it's this mnemonic or short. Okay, so SMART is just an acronym for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, timely. So it's a bit like the crab test, you can see already. So what you're trying to do is make a really specific question that's really narrow. No? So you can see more or less exactly what is that you're trying to answer. And already, like when you ask this question, and already people have some arguments. No? So you usually have this research question and maybe some hypothesis. So this is what you know when a research question is really good. If people start saying arguments already, they are already trying to answer it. Okay, if it's too vague, then people don't know what exactly are you asking. Read it once and once again, have people read it for you as you work on it, and then when it's clear enough, then you will know. And we will do some of this also towards the end of the semester. Measurable, so try to, I know not everything has to be quantitative, but try to think in ways where this research question can be measured in terms of different statistics that you find or different papers, data. Maybe you can find an indicator for this exact question or something that proxies it. So something that is measurable. Last time I had a student write something about a very philosophical question, which is very interesting for me to read also. But in the framework of this class, we're a bit more pragmatic. So we're talking about development policies, development economics, and for sure for other courses, philosophy you can do, but it's very hard to measure philosophical abstract. You could do it, you're free to do it, but then you have to really show how you can measure this, how you can show the results for sure. Something achievable. Here, also narrow it down, it can help you achieve the conclusion. So here think about the length of the paper, you only have like 12 pages now to write this whole paper, you cannot do everything. So just, if you love the topic and you have many things to say, please pick one, even if you love all the topics that you have in. This is sometimes hard because you get very engaged, you find many different ideas, papers, but just narrow it for the sake of this class. And achievable also means, for example, last semester a lot of students want to investigate, for example, the effects of Trump tariffs. What is the problem with this already? It's too recent, yeah, you don't have data, you could do forecasts, but this is not a forecast class. I mean, if you have the knowledge of doing forecasts, well, you can try that, but it's really difficult, and forecasts are very uncertain, you don't know what will happen. So, better focus on a timeline that is achievable, that you have some data, some papers already done. Leave these like topics that don't have anything, maybe for a master thesis or if you want to do a PhD, because this is when you get creative and get the collection, your own, your collection, or if you know about machine learning, you can also try this web scraping, which is, but I mean, this is has not been shown in this class, so you don't have to. Timely, so this means you narrow it down in time, as you saw the example, 2014, 2000 something. So try to narrow this research question the most that you can. Sometimes some questions are more historical, so yeah, maybe you have a larger span. Some questions are really specific about the pink tide or the Oso familia. This already has a very specific timeline, so always think about this. And an extra thing I put here is think about a hypothesis. You know, this scientific method, no? That you observe a thing, then you ask your questions, then you make hypotheses. So the idea here with these academic papers is that you train yourself on how to follow the scientific method, no? For the social sciences, it's usually very, not a straight line like in the hard sciences, but at least try to do this type of scientific thinking, academic thinking. Yeah, also challenge yourself. Maybe you have some preconceptions of the topic, you think already what the answer is, but try to challenge yourself, find other sources that maybe have a totally different view. This is also part of the academic. You find the nuances of topics, you're not necessarily black or white. You find the nuances, the betweens, the spectrums, and everything can be segregated into many things.
When we design this, could we come out with this last point more or less with a kind of result that the own thinking, the hypothesis was wrong? Is this the conclusion, or should we then rewrite the question in line with more or less the new finding?
That's a very good question. I think there are two ways you can do that. You can either change your research question at the end to make it more appealing or more close to what you found, or you can be totally transparent and show your thought process. And at the end, of course, you don't say I was wrong, but then maybe you put some arguments that show that this is not the conclusion, this hypothesis that was made. Yeah, we will talk a bit more about this style also, how to write later on. Yeah, so in short, in a nutshell, this is it. So now you have time to think deeply about your research question, and then when we come back in January, we will talk more about it and share with each other so that you go home at the end of the semester with a very narrow guideline for yourself. And maybe I show a bit about the outline very quickly, just for your knowledge. Yes, so here, let me show you this slide. Already you have it in the slides for today. So here it's like a more or less complete guide with many links you can use if you already want to get into it. So the outline, how to find good sources to read also is important. Maybe from the beginning you already start reading. Maybe reading in, okay, it's important to say, doing research is not a straight line. Okay, maybe you think about a question and then you read something and then you're like, oh, okay, this is not smart. Questions, and then you go back, and this is because you read some sources that gave you a bit more light on the topic. This is fine as well, you can change. You have some guides here, also the crop test to read, find a good source, and Professor Manuel has a whole list of journals that you can use for developing. Organizing things, synthesizing ideas is also a topic we will dive more into later, but this is very important and what really makes a paper improve. When you really organize, find papers, you're not only summarizing whatever the people did and you have like one page of one paper, but you really organize topics of each paper. There's actually in this nice leaf guide, it shows you a whole method how you can synthesize topics. So it has a synthesis matrix. Maybe we can do some of this later on as well. So you have sources and then you have ideas. One source can have many ideas, and then you contrast them. So you're organizing a topic by a specific structure. Okay, so there are many links here. I don't want to take more time on this. Also about the style of writing, citation tools, we will talk step by step on this. But in terms of the outline, so I will show you this quickly. This will be for the next few sessions. but just that you have an idea more or less. So I would recommend that you follow this structure as close as you can. Not all papers have to have this structure, but commonly what you find that is typical is you do a review of the literature, you show your data or methodology, even if it's qualitative as well. Make explicit your methodology. You present your results, you do some discussions of limitations, and then you conclude. No, so this is very easy a structure. And then of course within there you can do sub-sections. But don't make too many sub-sections, like only one paragraph in sections. This is not very nice. But we will talk more about this later as the deadline for you to observe your outline comes closer. But more or less you have an idea, and the idea of the outline is like a skeleton. Sorry, but like a skeleton, and then when you start to find information, you put like the muscles and the tendons, and then you found you put the body together more or less. Okay. So unless maybe you are very good at writing, you have some background in writing, you can totally change the order, and if it makes a good point to do so. Otherwise, please follow the main structure. Okay, so then let's use the last minutes to talk about institutions, which is the topic of today. So now I think we're kind of going a bit back to the topics of the beginning, that we were talking about the development, history of Latin America. And the reading that we have today kind of starts showing the independences. I think they show that it was until 1922, but I think it's because they didn't include all the countries. So actually, some countries in Latin America, which, okay, this is also the debate, would be called Guyana or Belize, Latin America. It's also a debate in itself, but you can say more or less which countries were there, were in the, so which one is the earliest one?
Sorry. I think it's Brazil.
It's green, so it's like in the middle. Look more for the purple, bluish. Yeah, the
The
same.
United States, I guess.
Yeah, the United States.
Let's see.
Yeah. It's yeah. So it's purple, and then the other one is.
I think it's Haiti because it was the only more or less revolution in Latin America.
Yeah, that's true. US is not Latin America, but it's kind of showing here, so it's yeah. So it was Haiti. From Latin America, it's Haiti.
There's Belize up there, the pink one. Yes. I just want to.
Yeah, just Belize.
That is the recent one.
Yeah,
So,
the most recent one,
yeah.
exactly. Yeah. Yes. Okay. So you have more or less an idea of the independences. So now let's get into groups and let's discuss what the paper had in terms of, first of all, what was the legacy of the colonial era in the early 1700s. And the paper emphasizes these Bourbon and Pombalin reforms and what was the change before and after.
I have one question to the map, if it's okay. Next to, I think Suriname, or is it? Yeah, there's like a gray spot. Yeah.
Yeah, no data.
Okay.
I think, I don't remember which order is it. Is it Guyana Française, Guyana, and Suriname?
French?
The French Guyana? Yeah. I never hear any news from this one. It must either be going bad or really bad. I never hear any news, guys. I never watch it. Okay, so let's get together into groups. I leave it up to you if you want to change or if you want to stay where you are. So I guess groups of 3, 4 groups of 3, and then I have these 4 quick questions. So just take 5 to 10 minutes. I will ask around in 5 minutes if you're done. Just think about it from what you read, and then we discuss it. So yeah, let's do it as always, unless you want to change, shuffle it a little bit. Okay. So then 3, 3, 3, and 3.
And who's first question?
Unless you have a preference. We can go around this way or this way. You want to be first? Yeah. Okay. So let's do it. 1, 2, 3, 4. This time. We set aside for you. Who's presenting today? Yeah. Do you want to try the computer really quick to save time later?
Do you have a question? Do you have the question? No. What's the question? Question about the literature and text and question about text or okay. Is that not in a PowerPoint?
Yeah, but it's not there.
Genau, das ist so ganz ehrlich, dann beantworte ich mal.
Said in the text to bring independence, they relied a lot on
No,
that
it's fine.
resources
Eine, das ist aber auch
because
eine Einstellung.
But
Napoleonic Wars everybody wanted.
but is not that not the presentation or usually that is in the PowerPoint. Usually is that in the PowerPoint, but now is that not showing? But could showing that?
Yeah, I will.
Wollen wir die Frage aufteilen in Fragen? Das ist eine PowerPoint. Was ist die Frage?
Which were the main economic transitions during the independence?
Okay, dann machen wir during und dann after. In 2 Teilen. Okay, kannst du es hier hinstellen, dann kann ich sie abschreiben.
Yeah, the important thing is they can read. Can everybody read? Okay, so let's do 5 minutes. So really, whatever you have in mind that you read doesn't have to be super deep, and then we discuss it.
Maybe
What constitutions are
Yes, and the capital is well, like the most.
capital threat? Because Schutz von Eigentum war nicht mehr, wie wir sich gedacht haben, das muss natürlich viel Kapital.
But I think also the fact like the war destroyed a lot. So there was capital loss, labor loss, and
there was an existence of a large
And also they changed the system of economy from slave labor
yes.
to free labor. So it's an economic transition.
Größten 19. Jahrhundert.
If you have any questions, if what
Ich
questions
glaube
you
nicht, dass
feel,
viel Sinn macht, zwischen During und After zu unterscheiden, oder?
Wie? Ich will sie nicht machen, okay.
Ich glaube nicht. Das passiert so
Zusammen.
zusammen.
I think
Also eine Aufzählung machen oder
Ja, das wird interessant.
Losses machen oder Changes.
Also so
have you opened the text?
Yeah.
Okay, I just have a look because I need the text in.
Do you have something to look at it? Because I need.
Oh yeah, I need that Multifaktoren authorization, and it costs very time consuming.
People die, human
human loss.
I mean,
Do you want me to come to
in June.
The worst was the class.
Because I need to use this one myself.
People flight as well.
For what? She wants to use my iPad. Because she has to. Yeah, just take your own laptop. I haven't bought a brother laptop. So you don't have anything to look at the text? Yeah, but I can just like recall because I already read it. Yeah, okay. Yeah. Okay. I think the main point is the colonial institution. I don't know how they
Infrastructure, destroyed.
So they're saying that I will say that capitalism, which in that time, which in this kind of time area has kind of
Ja, das meinte ich.
has the power over. Yeah.
Then should I push like resistance?
Yeah.
Ja, aber machen wir einfach zusammen dann einen Punkt mit Material Destruction. Material and livestock, I think.
Lack of development also.
Institutions, yeah. Which is like
Kannst du die Scheiben einfach aussehen?
restricted access to education and politics.
Ja, okay. And
Slash
material.
Slash material. Slash material.
Material.
Und dann Punkt
Mines.
Management of Mines, Livestock und vier Plätze.
Wie?
Der vier Plätze, das ist so aussehen.
Ja, ich glaube, das kommt. Aber okay. Then mines.
Relied on coercive labor.
Were abandoned.
Loss of Livestock.
Ist Livestock oder Livestock?
Okay, and then I think the second point is that there was just property rights in the ecosystem.
Also das ist ja wahrscheinlich der nächste Punkt. Das
Ja. Soll ich das in denselben Punkt nehmen? Mit Infrastructure? Das ist eigentlich schon nachher.
Das ist eigentlich ja nicht Loss, sondern Change.
Ah, okay. Ist das alles, was Loss angeht? Ist nicht noch etwas anderes?
Capital.
Ah, genau, Kapital. Kapitalflucht. So. Okay.
Due to unpredictability.
Also ich wollte einfach aufgeteilt in Sprachen.
Ich glaube, das reicht.
Ja, das wäre warte mal, ich wollte eigentlich nur, dass du schreibst, damit du weißt.
Integration of labor system.
Desintegration oder Desintegration?
Disintegration.
Ja, das war darauf wollte ich nur jetzt noch.
And what is BNP of the question one? What is BNP of the question one? Can you read that because I cannot see that clearly? What is the BNP and can you just see that? But because I cannot. The first question.
Das ist ein Name of the
Last one? Okay, cool. Yeah, I thought that was first.
Okay, 2 more minutes, is enough? 2 more minutes?
Das können wir dazu schreiben,
I
das ist ja
think you're
klar.
almost there, so just
Ja, ja, wir werden das Aber was charakterisiert diese Institution?
Class conflict.
Korruption und so.
Class confliction.
Ja, Korruption.
Like different class because of capitalism that they have the lower class and the high class. They have the interest conflict with each other.
Gab es gewisse Teile mit den Kolonisatoren.
In general, I think that is in the text. I'm not sure about the context, but what else about the capitalism? I mean,
Okay, was sonst? Was sonst noch hier? Political Stability macht noch dazu.
Genau, Spannend ist, dass wir jetzt aufs Haus kriegen, also bei der Kirche einzugrenzen.
Wir sagen uns einfach wenig.
Wenig weil wir haben die letzten Punkt
Nein, so ist gut. Dann wir haben nur
Okay, so
Text.
whatever you have, don't worry, it doesn't have to be complete. The idea is to discuss. So let's start. So we start with what was the legacy of the colonial era in the 1700s? What did they do wrong?
So we're gonna start. Sorry.
So our question was what was the legacy of colonialism? First of all, was it lack of development, especially if you compare to European development? That was, of course, because they, how do you say, ausgebeutet, exploited the countries there, so they had a lack of development. Then it influenced also the long-term path of those countries after colonialism, so the growth and also the progress was very limited because they were led with lack of institutions and corruption, and so we have they had technical disadvantages and institutional or the institutions there were not as efficient because of the what the colonialist states led the states with, and of course social inequality because of the long-term what was the buzzword again? Exploitation. There was a very poor population, and also in the population there were some elites, but the majority were very poor.
Yes, as you can see, we split it up into Spain and Portugal, and they both tried to get rid of the disadvantages, and they did it in different ways. They, for example, reduced the church reforms in the Portugal colonization, but tried to,
The Spanish one.
the church reforms in the Spain colonization, the Spanish colonial region, right? And they decided to missionarize these parts, and in the other colonization part, they tried to get rid of the church and focus more on just one state, Brazil, of course. And we didn't write it down, but they also started to yeah, work on slavery, on the local, on the people living there. Yes.
So what you mentioned now is the Pombalin and Wilbon report? That was not the
Yeah, this one's the Bourbon, I guess, or am I wrong? And this
Okay.
one is the Bomber line.
Okay. It's yeah, Bourbon is just the Spanish and Pombalin.
Right.
Okay. So they did not necessarily keep the church out completely, but just
Not try to reduce it. They try to
the
reduce
power
it.
of the church.
Right. They try to reduce power, and also the my God, my English is so bad today. Astrological part of the empire in Brazil.
Compared
Well,
to the
but these
Spanish
were
one.
the rulers of the time. They were still royalty and aristocrats.
They were still,
They were born Pombalin.
yeah.
So basically, these new kings, because it was a change in dynasty from the Bourbon, from the Habsburg to the Bourbon, they just wanted to change things for a specific purpose.
Missionarization
You mean like more Catholic?
yes.
No, because they wanted to reduce the power of the Catholic
On the
Church.
Portugal side, you mean?
On both sides.
On both sides.
Yeah. So there was like the key goal of these reforms.
To missionize these empires.
No.
No?
No, they wanted to extract even more resources, so to gain more power
Right.
in these colonies. Because in the time before, in the early 700s, all of these issues of extractivism, of really monopolies, no real control of the colonies. So then with the Bourbon and Pombalin, they wanted to take even more control of the colonies after this time, to get more money for the crown.
No, I got you. They try to get more power in it and get more out of these of the rural areas with all of them, all of what they could get out of the colony. But on the other hand, it was just a difference in the church turn.
Yeah, but missionary work, I don't know where this work.
Sorry,
The
second.
missionary work was part of the no, I don't know.
It was part of the Spanish of the Bourbon colony empire, but on the other hand, not on the Portugal side. It's just the difference was just in the, or mainly just in the part of belief and the Christian.
Yeah, but the main goal was not missionary. It was to get more power, make it more efficient, the colonies, but to extract more money for them. Okay. Okay, thank you.
You're
So
welcome.
let's go to the next one. Okay, we're running a bit out of time, so let's go very summarizing quickly. What is the main point? I see that you have a nice chart, but very summarize it.
Okay, so we had the question which were the main influences to the independence of Hispanic American states. And one big point we came up with was the abolishment of slavery, which led to the uprising of a labor market where you didn't have labor market where you didn't have to pay anybody anymore. And also the role of the church was a big one, because there was kind of a monopoly in the power distributions and also in the monetary distributions, because there was power concentrated in only one or few institutions for the elites. That led to no investing, for example, in education and infrastructure, and that could be one of the reasons that led to the independence, due to the frustration of the people living there.
Another key point to take into account is the slow loss of power of the Spanish crown, mostly, but also of Portugal. The seat of power was quite far away from the colonies. Over time, local elites were formed, mingling with the local elites that were there before. So So there was a shift in political power in the sense of that the ones who were supposedly controlling the country started losing the grip over it, which then gave space to a change, a more massive change.
And maybe in addition that Spain and Portugal lost more or less also power, but also other empires like as of USA or France, as British and French were not so present there, and therefore more or less countries have been left into independence from a more legal perspective, but from an institutional perspective and society perspective, nothing has really changed. And this is a problem. There was a vacuum which was not filled appropriately.
And what was the main cause of this vacuum in Europe? Power vacuum?
Because institutions have not been established. There's no experience from the local politicians, and from this perspective, also the fruits from the Industrial Revolution could not be grabbed enough, and therefore there was more or less micromanagement. It was also one of the reasons of this war of independence, that every country did their own, and therefore no power was being established because everybody was fighting against each other.
And there was one like a special external force keeping Spain and Portugal very busy at this time, and this created this power vacuum.
I'm not sure.
Yes,
I want to
guess?
say maybe civil wars in Spain.
Yeah, well,
And
not,
also in
not
Europe-
civil wars actually, but
Wars in general and revolutions in Europe, especially in the late 1800s. Yeah, the French Revolution destabilized France, I think, and also not only
and then
France.
what happened after
It had an impact on Europe.
Napoleonic Wars.
Yeah, exactly.
Napoleonic Wars and
yeah,
at the end of
so
the
Napoleon
90s.
was keeping Spain and Portugal busy, so
Mhm.
they had to fight this guy, and they lost grip of the Americas. This was an important external factor for this. Okay, thank you guys. Let's move on to
Noch einer. Den ersten Punkt. Machst du einfach das, er macht das. Okay, hello. We have the third question. So, which were the traditions during and after the independence? We separated this question into 2 points. We have on one hand the losses, so what was lost, and then the changes, so what was developed after the independence in Europe.
So one of the biggest losses was the decline in the workforce because there was a war, so many people died, many people got injured, which heavily increased the workforce, which was the biggest factor decreasing development. But also there were big infrastructural losses, such as abandoned mines, and we also had a big loss of livestock, which were killed in the wars. And one other big factor was the loss of outside capital, since the independence made outside investors believe that their capital wasn't safe in these new formed states. They took the capital out of the countries.
Yes, and general changes that happened was the disintegration of the slave labor system because both sides, both the loyalists and the independents, promised the slaves liberation if they fought for their side, so that led to the disintegration of the slave labor system after the independence. And then last one we managed to write down because of time was institutional change, because of course new constitutions were implemented, which led to a general change of the system of governance and economic legalities. Yes.
Yes, exactly. Also the expansion, of the people which were before very concentrated in these mining areas or in sugar areas, they kind of started to expand to other areas and to, let's say, populate the conflict. Okay. Okay, thank you guys. Let's
first one is that there was some persistence of extractive colonial institutions. So there was like concentrated land ownership, restricted access to education and political politics, and also they relied on coercive labors still, so slavery and forced labor generally. Then we also had that one of the main points was weak property rights and legal systems, so that the property rights were poorly defined, very costly to enforce, and that discouraged long-term investment due to instability and unpredictability. Okay.
And the third point was political instability. They showed chronic instability and low modernization, and then they also showed low state capacity, and also they lacked public infrastructure that are crucial for development. And we thought that they differ from the previous paradigms we studied in class, because before we talked about like geographical determination and technology, and also talked about education, how all these factors like influence the development of different regions, different countries. But since they talked mostly about the colonialism and liberalization, and also about the whole system, we thought that they differed from the paradigms we studied about.
Yes, a matter of timing, no? The theories that we studied before were focusing on, what did the Latin American governments do in the 50s, 60s? This is what causes the problems that we have today. Versus no, we go back to the colonial times. All these institutions that were made here, that were not made, that are lacking, are the determinants of the situation that we have today. So this is, the institutionalists really believe the colonial times still are there today, causing a lot of trouble. And we will continue talking about this in the next session, I think. Thank you guys.
So welcome. So we just discussed independence in Latin America, and we switched to a more recent time, the time around 2007 and 2008. Let's make a small thought experiment. Think or imagine you're a policymaker in Latin America, in one country, for example Chile or Brazil. The global financial crisis just hit and unemployment is rising, there are protests on the streets, and you have to decide what you're going to change now. And you might think of two parts, the market and the state, and there is Alejandro Foxley coming in with the publishment in 2010, Market versus State, Post-Crisis Economics in Latin America. So here you can see Alejandro Foxley. He has an academic background in economics with a PhD and a civil engineering degree. What's interesting that is his practical experience, that he was a Minister of Finance from 1990 to 1994, and also a Minister of Foreign Affairs from 2006 to 2009. Additionally, he was a Chilean senator from 1998 to 2006, working in the Finance Committee. Why this perspective matters is that he has this unique combination between an economist and a politician, writing about his own reforms he implemented himself. And what's also matters that he has a very good expertise in Latin American development. So we're gonna test his publishment with the CRAB test. For currency, you can say, so it was published in 2010, so you can say it's just after the financial crisis hit, so then it was very recent and very accurate in this time. But also we're now in 2025, it might be a little bit outdated because it's 15 years ago. So his relevance is very clear that he wants to address the state versus market debate in Latin America and the development there. For the authority, he has very strong credentials. So he is an economist with a PhD and also a former minister. But there could be then the potential bias because he was a politician writing about the reforms he himself introduced. There might be this bias because we know politicians might be more in favor of the reforms they introduced than in a more negative way. And the Chilean perspective may dominate because he was like working in this finance and the representation might be then limited to other countries in Latin America. For accuracy, it's evidence-based with case study from Chile, of course, Finland and Ireland. So we have the European kind of view there. But at the same time, simultaneously, he's arguing that this is unsuitable. You can't take European views to the Latin American structures. So another positive point that is it was published by the reputable Carnegie Endowment, which is a big think tank working on global peace. So this is very positive. About the methodology limits. So as we talked about the SMART test earlier in the lesson, there is a lack of quantitative base, so a statistical and econometric analysis. But that doesn't mean that qualitative papers are always bad. So we wanted to mention that this is a qualitative policy essay. And for the purpose, this is very clear that he wants to inform the policy debate with practical lessons. So we came to the conclusion that it's a credible policy essay based on experience, but more a commentary than a scientific analysis. About the contribution to the literature and to the study overall, the question is that does Latin America need more market or more state for sustainable development? And why this matters, as I introduced you with the thinking of the global financial crisis and the time afterwards, there is this blame game pattern coming up after every crisis in Latin America. That, okay, the market has collapsed, there was this financial collapse, and the state couldn't prevent it. So what you're going to do now? And Foxley's answer here, or challenge to the debate, is that the question we stated here up is wrong itself, that this market or state question is wrong. He wants a more catalytic state that partners with the dynamic market and creating a knowledge-based innovative economy. What this means, Milan will go then later. So I want just to introduce to those separate thinkings, the more market and to the more state, and then Milan will go into the details Foxley wanted to introduce. So the core role of the market is to induce competition, to allocate resources efficiently and to lower the cost, and also to create export opportunities. And this we can see in Latin America already. We have trade agreements, we have regional integration, and we have lower tariffs. But what can you do then? So markets can be expanded through first public-private partnerships, for example in infrastructure, in health and education, but also you can go into the exports to, for example, the US market, the European market, and especially the Asian market. But why do we still need the state there? Opening and privatization often produce monopolies or oligopolies. So, for example, we said there the energy infrastructure and telecommunication. If you have then a monopoly, firms or companies can set prices on the market. So this will lead to higher prices for consumers and maybe a pressure on the courts and politicians because corruption may rise. So more market therefore requires more capable regulation and competition policy. And also what Foxley mentioned is the ill-fare state, so the opposite of a welfare state. That globalization has increased economic insecurity, there are precarious job situations and inequality rising. And now the Latin American welfare system often only protects the insiders, like he calls it, like the workers in the formal jobs, and leaving out the workers unprotected in the informal works. So the question is not about more or less state, but a kind of different state, so a state that is creating jobs and designing a great social protection net. So to wrap this up, these two thinkings, we have the market, that we need more market with strong competition and clear regulation. A market that drives and attracts private investments, and this problem that it could fail if monopolies emerge. And on the other hand, we have the state that provides protection, or should provide protection for vulnerable groups, should go beyond safeguarding only the insiders, and should design this social safety net. So we have Foxley creating this kind of bridge with the market, with the intelligent market and a transformed state coming together, yes, and designing this.
Okay, to come to the present state, or if I talk about the present, I mean 2010, because then was the paper published. I quickly want to summarize where the current economic models in Latin America are, because we talked about it a lot in recent lectures. So value creation mainly comes from natural resources, and the structure is quite simple, especially if you compare it to Europe or the United States. So we can see there a lot of raw materials and agriculture goods are exported, but of course that's very generalized. There are also differences in Latin American structures. So for example, we talked also about it, some countries don't even export any goods. The problem with that is that evidence shows, and you mentioned it also in the text, that high concentration of natural resources are associated with lower long-term growth. So if we compare growth over different countries, we can see there is a pattern. If you have highly concentrated in natural resources and your exploitation is highly concentrated in natural resources, you have lower long-term growth. And another really important factor is higher volatility, because you're more dependent on global markets and therefore on global shocks, such as the finance crisis. So there are new challenges through globalization. First one is through globalization, product cycles are becoming much shorter. So there is, I don't know, 10 years ago there was every 2 years there was a new phone. Now it's every half of a year. So production cycles are becoming much shorter. But not only production cycles, but also consumer behaviors in global markets in general are becoming much more volatile. That leads to more competition, and due to this competition, it's important to acknowledge the fact that knowledge is more important than natural resources, especially in the current state. So knowledge becomes the key production factor, and not only natural resources, and that leads to it's very important for Latin American states, because they have high focus, or they're highly focused on natural resources, and that leads to some disadvantages. I will continue later on. So why is knowledge the key production factor? Knowledge is based innovation enables to diversify production. Last lecture we had this map from Harvard, where you can see, okay, if I, for example, produce oil, if I go to refinerate it, I can make more money out of it. So it's very important to diversify the production, and do that. We can also diversify exportation, so it's linked to higher economic growth in the long term. And to apply this transformation to natural resources, it's very necessary, especially for Latin America's states, because, as I said, they're highly concentrated in natural goods. So knowledge has become more important because it's the basis for new technologies. They make it possible to diversify production and exports and to move into activities with higher value creation. That's what I tried to explain the last slide, because it's essential to gain, or if you want to gain more growth, especially in the long term, it's very important to step up the value chains. So good examples are, for example, South Korea or China. They managed to through knowledge to build an industrial base and move up in the hierarchy of value creation, and therefore have a more economic growth. But there are some challenges, especially in Latin America, because they have a fragmented system. So a lot of states don't have clear policies when it comes to which industrial policies do we want to apply to reach those goals to lift people out of poverty and inequality. So there is the concept of, or he made the concept up of a knowledge-based economy, and because these trends of globalization clearly requires a new model of how we're going to address it, and modern industrial development needs institutional framework that neither, and you said it before, neither is just protectionist, but also not out at all. So the state needs to play a role, but how or what kind of role the state needs to play, I'm going to explain later. So the role is to coordinate networks between private providers and also the state, and function as a catalyst to get the best out of both worlds. So in Latin America, the challenge is that existing support and the system are fragmented and not very effective. And modern industrial policy, therefore, needs to strengthen cooperation between those actors, and that's one of the main goals, to get like a cooperation between private and private-owned firms, universities, the education system, and also the state on a regional level. Then the role of the state in the knowledge-based economy is based on evidence that high-growth countries can conduct regularly institutional reforms. There was, for example, the link to Ireland. They managed, especially since the 1980s, through institutional reforms and the process all along, to get more economic growth, especially compared to Latin America. So the government must learn from successful international models and stay in dialogue with firms and citizens to implement reforms. And we spoke about it also, I think, 2 lectures ago. It calls like best practice, and try to really see what is working in other countries and what can we implement for ourselves to improve. So the state also supports the continuous national learning process. It's called National Innovation System. The state creates conditions for innovation, but mainly acts as a catalyst, as I said previously. So the state shouldn't come out of a role in the 1916 where he acted as a protectionist, but should open the markets for competition. And it must coordinate public and private actors to create synergies. And education remains crucial, and that's probably the main baseline for every lecture we had, that education is essential for long-term economic growth. So there are terms of the knowledge-based economy, what a state should provide, and the first one is access to capital. It's very important, especially in Latin America, because there's a lack of financing, and as an entrepreneur, you can't build your company if you don't have access to capital. So it's a major point that the state provides regulations to attract more capital. They feel links to the second point for direct investment, because in Latin America, I really generalize because obviously there are exceptions, but in general, the government and the state does not have the money to finance entrepreneurship on a wider space, so they're kind of dependent on foreign direct investment, so the state needs to find regulations to attract this money. And a third point is so-called productive clusters. Is the idea behind that is if you look like regions or very specific regions and try to identify what are the strengths in the regions to build so-called comparative advantages. For example, if you have like, to stay in the agriculture term, you have like a very fertile ground, and that's a comparative advantages, for example, to Germany or so, and then you need to expand on this. The third point is knowledge transfer. So as I spoke about how crucial education is, you also need to, or the idea is also to look in other nations to try to get partnerships with research institutions, universities, and also private companies to learn from what are they doing and to implement it on their own, to get like the knowledge transfer. And the most important one, I said it before, is higher education, and that's the baseline. I think that's for the main thing you should learn of the presentation. That education is key when it comes to economic growth. So he's not only talks about the state as a driver for innovation, but he also speaks for when it comes to social protection, and therefore he compared it to different welfare states in Latin America and Europe. In Europe, you can see we have a large middle class. Of course, keep in mind it's 2010, so there's also a change right now. But in general, we have stable employment and so-called the breadwinner model. It's quite a conservative model. It means that usually the male is going to work and the female is staying at home and raising children and taking care of the household. Of course, there's a shift going on. And most importantly, we have formal work in the formal labor market. So we have like fixed contracts. We have strong regulations on you can't get fired easily. So if your boss is not fine with your performance, you can't say, okay, you're out and then you need to leave the next day. So we have like a higher regulated labor market, especially in comparison to Latin America. And the effect is that we have a system that protects insiders. Insiders means people who work in formal jobs and in formal jobs because we have a formal labor market. And he said it or the conclusion is for the European welfare state that we have a quite functional welfare state. Of course, it's debatable, but especially in comparison to other welfare states, the European welfare state is quite functional, and also the European welfare state is highly generalized because we have different models also in Europe. There's like the liberalized one in England, and we have more the conservative one in Germany and Netherlands, and then you have in Scandinavia, you have like I would say better welfare state, but so you have also 3 different types of welfare states in Europe. So just keep in mind. In Latin America, we have a smaller middle class, so there's less official employment, and the labor market in general is very heterogeneous. So you don't sometimes you don't have a work contract, and so it's more unofficial. And other major what's it called? Difference is lower taxation. I didn't make it up here, but the taxation in Europe is quite high, and in Latin America it's much lower. And he said, in general, the Latin American welfare state is not functional, so he called it the dysfunctional welfare state, because it also tries to model the European welfare state with protecting the insiders, but the problem is that the majority of Latin American employees are outsiders because they don't work in formal jobs. So the welfare state in Latin America concentrates to protect the insiders, while the majority are outsiders. Then we made up the comparison to the US welfare state. There we can see we have lower taxation and therefore also a smaller welfare state. The difference here is that private spending is much higher. So he compares Sweden with the United States, and we can see here that taxes in Sweden are much higher with 26% compared to the United States with 10%, but the private spending in Sweden is quite low with 2%, therefore in the United States was quite high with 18%. So in the United States you need to provide on your own for education, healthcare and pensions and so on. What's very interesting is that the private spending plus taxes in general is quite similar. So you have in Sweden with 41% and in the United States with 39%, it's plus or minus. It's the same. So it's quite interesting because the distribution is different. So we have in the United States less state or more private spending, but the total expenditure is quite similar to the EU. And the lesson we can learn out of this is that you can finance a European welfare state with US level taxation. That's crucial to understand because that leads also to the dysfunctionality of the Latin American state. So you made up the so-called the welfare state in Latin America. So sometimes you say it's dysfunction, sometimes you say it's welfare. Basically that means that the welfare state is dysfunctional because it tried to replicate the European model with US level taxation, but low physical capacity because the taxation is much lower, leads to institutional weaknesses and make it impossible to reproduce a universal European-style system. On top of that, the existing programs do not address the structural problems of the labor market. They mainly protect a small group of insiders, such as public employees or workers in large firms, while the majority stays unprotected. And what's very important also to understand is that this type of welfare state is not increasing or is not increasing inequality. Can also lead to more inequality. So there's a new approach. So you try to address, okay, now we have the analysis that the welfare state is not working. So we made up a new approach, so-called the public-private partnerships. And the idea is the reorientation of the Latin American welfare state, a model that combines public and private spending. And so the state focuses on key areas because it doesn't have the opportunity or the capability to provide for everything. The state needs to focus on the key areas such as inequality, poverty and education, while the private sector should offer complementary services such as health insurance and pensions. And what really matters is the right mix. So of course it's very debatable what's the right mix, but we can say for sure that the welfare state in Latin America can provide for not for every services. So we need to find a combination between private provision and state provision, and that's basically the goal. Of course, therefore you need highly regulations also on the state because the problem with privatization is that usually it costs more and it's less quality. Therefore, you need to stay to regulate the quality and also the competition between different private providers, so they can make money that easily in deploytation the people.
It's almost time. You can wrap it up.
We started like 20. So we.
Yes, so you already have 20 minutes.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So just quickly.
Yeah, just finish. It's okay. I mean, you can continue, but please.
Okay.
Yes.
We have like a small comparison to the mandatory text. So the similarities that the state does not create innovation alone, but provides a condition for it. And coordination between public governments and firms are essential. And education is the main driver for economic growth. But there are some differences in the text when it comes to the focus. So our text we presented is more focused on institutional reforms, while the mandatory text focuses more on innovation and coordination.
Yeah, so we have a conclusion, maybe I'll wrap it up just shortly, that the main tension is that privatization creates risk, like monopolies, high costs, low quality, but the state also lacks on the capacity to perform, to deliver this social net at only if the state provides it. So this you can take into account, and yeah, that's from us. Thank you. We had also some question what there is in the text.
Sorry, just for...
Yeah, that's fine, that's fine.
Please, Christian, you have
Thank you, Samuel and Milan, for a very clear presentation. I think we had 4 readings today, the mandatory from Bertula, which gave a little bit of perspective from a historic point of view. Then we had the student reading with a very modern analysis, and we had the 2 further readings which was more related to cross-country and within-country networks. I think the relevance for me was in particular with this presentation also that there is a very clear overview from a modern perspective about the situation in Latin America. And I thought a little bit by reading it, it would be a recommendation that every politician in Germany in particular should read this article, because it gives a lot of hints what should be done and what should not be done. And maybe some activities would go in a better direction also here. Yeah, thank you for your presentation. I think it was very nice to listen. It was also easy to understand because you did not read. I think you had free speech. You looked to the audience, and there was a contact between you and the audience. I think it was good. Something that you started with the author to bring the author into perspective, a little bit the background, the time, what he did. I think also pros and cons, what was advantages that he was an economist and politician, but on the other side also limits. You mentioned maybe a low bias in Chile, or that also that he was a politician by itself, and you also mentioned critically the limitation that this was more qualitative with maybe less focus on quantitative aspects. I think you gave a very clear overview at the present to set the scene, clear structure, currency, authority, relevance, accuracy, purpose. I think that was clearly mentioned. And then you, Milan, you put the different stones more or less into this frame. And I think it was easy to follow from our perspective. We made also a conclusion at the end. We started with an overview, the conclusions at the end, to bring it into perspective. I think you added also some interim questions for yourself. I think that's always a very nice opportunity to more or less bring the context again also for the audience. You structured it, you answered the question, and I think you came back always to the big picture of the presentation. I liked the slides. It was easy to understand and to follow, and also the more or less the relation between details and facts. What could be maybe improved, not a lot. I think it was, you mentioned, I saw here also the relation to the Bertula presentation. You added it at the end as well. I was a little bit surprised about the statement that this is not tiny anymore. Yes, it's 10 or 15 years old, but from my perspective, it was quite actual and represents the state. And maybe you could add also a question why you made the statement that this might not be so actual. But overall, I think it was an excellent presentation, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yes, thank you, Christian, very nice answer. And thank you, guys. Maybe if you stay 1 minute, I give you my comments directly, and then so we are not taking time from the others. But thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Yeah, sorry.
No, because that, yes.
Warte, ich frage zurück. Ja.
IMF.
Was sind die
what makes